Biological soil educator Nicole is in to give us the good oil on soil. Yes, today we're taking a look to see what lies beneath all of us. Welcome back to Good Morning. How are you?
No, I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, today we're going to be looking at, I guess, what's out in our own backyards or what's out the backyard here in Avalon. So we've sort of gone out and we've dug a piece of lawn up and we're going to have a look at the soil and I guess what's happening with the soil.
That's right, yeah. And I think a lot of people don't actually dig underneath their soil and actually check it out and see what's going on. We just take it for granted what you're seeing on top of that soil surface.
And why would we half the time, you know? I mean, unless you are gardening or, you know, doing some stuff in the backyard, but otherwise you wouldn't have any other benefit for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, sadly, that's true. So there's a whole lot of indicators and a whole lot of stuff that's going on here. If we dig, we can actually get an idea about what's going on underneath our soil and then solve some of these problems. So we've got weeds, moss, these kinds of things. So, I mean, this is from the Avalon studio here, and this is a lawn, you know. It's very interesting. What have we got growing?
Yeah, well, bits and pieces of it. You could tell me that.
I could,
bits and pieces of everything. But is our soil good? Is our soil good out there?
No, not really. No. So this is very interesting. We've got things like moss. Remember we talked about it last time. We're looking at.
It was a long time ago. My memory's probably gone since then. But
primitive. We're looking at primitive soil conditions, and the only thing that's able to exist in this soil is moss.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're sort of going to that far end of the very beginnings of soil formation.
Right.
So it's telling me there's not very much organic matter in there. There's not very much biological life, and it's actually the biology that feed our plants. So if we haven't got good biology in here, then our plants don't get the nutrients that they need. It encourages more weed growth and it encourages pests and diseases.
So what are ways that we can, I guess, help to, make our soil a lot better?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that, I think, in the next few segments. But what I'd like to talk about today is actually if we do dig, what can we see?
Okay.
Yeah? And so this is quite interesting. If you just have a look at, if we dig underneath this moss, that's how deep those roots go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's very little root penetration. And what's happened here is we've got probably anaerobic conditions, and anaerobic means there's no oxygen in there.
Okay.
And then we start to form things like alcohols and formaldehydes.
Which, it was interesting because I was reading through the notes about alcohol. Our bodies are probably the only organisms that can actually absorb alcohol efficiently.
Yeah.
Not that we do absorb, not that I'm trying to make it a drinking segment or anything, but our soil, we can't. It won't handle it.
There's very few organisms that can deal with alcohol. So once we've got alcoholic kind of conditions happening in here, your roots die, the biology die, you're basically sterilising the soil. Yeah. So if that will happen, if we get waterlogged soils for a long period of time, or we're driving over with our cars and compacting it, or just our walkways. So you often find you're walking along and you're compacting that soil with our feet. So we can see that this soil has become very compacted. We've got, it just sort of, it's not holding itself together at all. There are worms in here, which is promising to see. So worms are there to kind of help.
Is that a good thing if you do see worms
Absolutely.
in there?
So if I was to do a worm count in here, I'd probably find anywhere between 5 to 10 worms, which is telling me that these conditions still need to be improved. So we can actually do a count. So we take a spade by spade and we count the number of worms that are in there.
Is this quite common? Is our backyard quite common for New Zealand backyards, or is it?
I don't think that that's uncommon.
It's a bit rough around here.
It is a bit rough around here. What's quite interesting too is only hungerweed. You would remember that from your childhood, perhaps? I certainly do.
Yeah, definitely.
So these are the prickly plants that we find. And so that's part of this compaction thing too, that we haven't got many nutrients in there. So as soon as we compact it, we lose our calcium and our nutrients.
Right.
And that's an important part of keeping these soils open as well. So only hungerweed, you run around there in bare feet. And often it is where you've been running because we've compacted it. So there are things that we can do about that, however.
We're going to have to stop shooting our segments outside in that because everybody's walking over that area. What other things can we tell about the soil? We can talk about
how is it that this soil holds together, and it's quite blocky. Yeah, so it comes apart in blocks. Yeah. And also we can look at the colour. So the colour, there's a bit of washed out colour in here. Yeah. So it's quite pale.
Yep.
And also that there's mottling, you know, that these patches. We get different colours, different patches. We also look at root penetration, which I've talked about.
Which was, you're saying that the root penetration in these is not very deep.
No, it's not very deep at all. So we have got issues. Here we've got...
It's a bit darker, isn't it?
Darker. And so what I think's happened here is someone's actually dropped some compost and left it there on the ground by the gate. And we've got ranunculus, buttercup. And so buttercup is telling me that there's a lot of moisture that's actually sitting there in the soil that's not moving. So you often find it in wet areas, and it will hold that soil together. So maybe if it was a bit boggy, but you can actually drive your vehicle over it.
So you can tell by a lot of the plants that are in the soil what kind of the conditions and what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And by the way that it breaks up, and you can tell by that with the soil that you use.
But also what we're seeing is a lot of organic matter that's not broken down. And so that tells me as well that the biology's not working. Because things should be breaking down, getting turned over and being sent up to the plants as nutrients for them to grow healthily. So what I've got for comparison is a soil here that...
Oh, you brought that with you?
I did, I brought this with me. Now
is that from your backyard?
We've got some longer grass. No, this is from some friends of mine.
Oh, you can tell the roots are a lot longer, aren't they?
A biological block that's been doing what I'm talking about for the last 2 years. So when we do a worm count in here, we find... oh, there's a worm.
Yeah.
Anywhere between 30, 40, 50 worms in this per spade. So we've got a soil that's really, it's starting to tick. It's not all the way there, but look at the root penetration.
Right.
And these roots, should be being able to go, that deep. So.
Right.
But what we also found when we dug a hole a metre deep, and we went all the way down and we found humus and worms to a metre down.
Which is great.
It's great, yeah. It means that means our roots can follow those burrows, that we've got nutrients cycling right from that bedrock, which is excellent.
Fantastic. Well, Nicole, that's all we have time for. What are we going to be looking at next week?
Oh, excellent. What are we looking at next week? We're looking at insects? Are we looking at
we
insects?
can look at it. We can look at insects next week.
All right, so we'll be looking at insects next week and what they are as indicators. Yeah,
Wonderful.
So, yep.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.